we knew we couldn't just start with products, right? Because then we'd be no better than all the other brands targeting people of color. We wanted you to understand the what, the why, and the how of craft beer products, of craft beer culture, and then let you decide. Is this something that you like? Do you want to be a part of this community? And if you don't, it's fine. But look what it is and learn about it. And that was why it was important to show content. Black people brewing, Black ownership.
This is the Changeup. I'm Keith Hernandez. Today we welcome Beny Ashburn and Tio Hunter, co-founders of Inglewood-based craft brewery Crowns and Hops. We talk about how they turned a passion for great beer into a business, leaving the corporate marketing world behind, and their innovative approach to fundraising that gives the community a chance to own a piece of the pie. All right, today I have Beny and Tio, founders of Crowns and Hops. Welcome to the show, guys.
It's cracking.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you. I've been a big fan of craft beer for many, many years. And what I'm loving that I'm seeing is that the world continues to grow in the craft beer and the community continues to grow. And what's most exciting is people of different backgrounds are starting to enter it, right? You can see my face. I'm probably what you'd normally walk into a craft beer place and see, which is kind of that bearded dude that walking in and tasting their beers. But you guys are actually adding something different to the scene. Can you tell me a little bit about how you started Crown and Hops?
Well, I don't know, dude. I'm a bearded dude too, so
Yeah.
there's that. I mean, in a minute, I think Beny can speak to it. I mean, we're literally about to do a festival called Beards Without Beards. So,
Cool.
both of us gonna be sitting on the sidewalk. But I'll let my dope CEO get into who we are.
Yeah, so we started probably about 8 years ago. Tio really introduced me to the world of craft beer. I was completely oblivious to understanding that craft could be so complex and could be so absolutely delicious. And I learned from just watching him in supermarkets. It's something as simple as going into the aisles, and you would think Tio worked there because he would engage with people coming into the store and like, so what kind of beer do you drink? How can I help you? And I'm like, do you work here? It's so bizarre, but it was so fascinating because he loved it so much. And his passion was super contagious as it relates to me and my understanding of craft beer culture. But what we noticed is there weren't any people of color. There was no diversity. It was really mainly just me and Tio when we would go to events or breweries and really just be kind of talking to ourselves inside of our own little hemisphere. So together, Tio with his experience and
Please,
love.
I talk to everybody. You serious, girl? I talk to
I
everybody.
mean, yes, he talks to everyone, but the point is there wasn't anyone in the room that looked like us, that maybe
Yeah.
came from where we came from, and it was obvious. It was very obvious. But Tio, with his phenomenal palate, and me with my brand marketing experience, saw an opportunity to create a world in which Black and brown people could find a place to connect inside of the craft beer space. And that's how our original company, Dope and Dank, Black People Love Beer, started.
And so that original company was more of an events-based company, right? A lifestyle company to get people.
Yeah.
Would you say the idea is more comfortable with craft beer, or to kind of celebrate and show everyone else that there already was this community built, it just wasn't getting the proper recognition?
I mean, well, let's be honest. You can definitely feel more at home when you see yourself in something. You can
For
definitely
sure.
feel like you can speak how you normally speak and not how you speak at work, especially in a pub or in a bar or a tap room. There's something about just being able to be yourself somewhere that, is meant to be the place where you let your hair down, or, and if you don't see that, then you're kind of always, on point. You're always, I think, waiting for, I don't know, I guess, and again, applying it to like how you feel at work is, I think, the feeling that I would hope that all the listeners understand is the feeling of being the only one in the room.
Yeah.
It sucks. You just can't relax and chill, and Beny saw that as not only a huge obstacle and a problem to solve, but, we just saw it as an opportunity as well. There are a ton of people that could stand to use a space that they could just be their most authentic self,
Yeah.
and we learned it from corralling a community online with Black people love beer and brown people love beer. We experienced it once we started creating our activations with Dope and Dank and just doing pop-ups. And then we realized that the ultimate goal was to achieve racial equity in craft beer by owning a craft brewery and a brew pub.
So what was that inflection point, right? You were putting on these events, you were having people come up to you and talk to you about the community you're building. Was it money? Was it branding? What was it that made you guys go, you know what, we got to be making this ourselves?
So yeah, it was our first beer collaboration that we did with El Segundo Brewing Company, and we did a release event, and they told us, we're like, listen, this is probably one of the biggest events we've had, even bigger than our own anniversary party, right? And I think there was a moment inside the actual day, and me and Tio just kind of looked around, and we were like, we could do this. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
is we're past the point of requesting borrowed time in other people's spaces for this one moment for people of color to come together to celebrate. When we leave here, based on all of the social presence we created and the digital movement, and Black people love beer, brown people love beer, we saw that those moments were happening every single solitary day. It wasn't just once a
Yeah.
month, once every 2 months, but yet there wasn't any place for them to go and celebrate on a consistent level. And have these moments, and do this sharing, and connect. So we knew that it was time for us to really put the business plan together and figure out how do we become the not only brewery space, but get our products on shelves as well. Biggest turning point, I'll let you talk about.
Well, one, and shout out to, every brewery and brewer and brewery owner that maybe wasn't brewer, or whatever the case might be, who has helped us along the way. We didn't get here by ourselves, definitely much to our own fruition, but, El Segundo Brewing Company, LA Ale Works, Three Weavers, Temescal in Oakland, JW Wakefield in Miami, like, have been huge contributors. But, again, I would say, to Benny's point, the biggest turning point was, I would say, turning point one was realizing that we needed to prepare ourselves to be a brewing company.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the most pivotal point was when we were working on a project with Brewdog,
Oh, cool.
which fairly is getting, scrutiny right now for creating an environment that's conducive for everybody to feel accepted and loved and successful as well. They're definitely doing what they need to do on that front. But 3 years ago, they were one of the first organizations to acknowledge us and our efforts, for not only what it would do for ourselves, but what it would ultimately do for the entire industry. What we tell any entrepreneur or anyone looking to finally jump out on their own, to be fucking ready. Like, be ready, man,
Yeah.
because you could wish and dream and hope that whatever you've been, keeps you up at night, and whatever, plan you have for yourself is just going to happen. It'll happen if you are ready for it to be happen. And at that point in time, Benny and I have flushed through this. Well, I would say it was like a refined marketing deck at that point.
Okay.
We had gotten some numbers together, but by the time we were asked, what do you need in order to succeed? We had a business plan. We had the makings of what would be, the beginning of our financial model and forecast. And we were ready for it. And they were one of our first investors. We then put together a team to build Crowns and Hops Brewing Company, find some contract brewers, because we realized that having products out that people could immediately find aligned with who we were was one of the most important things that we could do. Because at the time, there were literally companies being taken off shelves for not being aligned with the community's ideas and philosophies
Yeah.
and beliefs.
Thank you for bringing up contract brewery. Can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of that to collaborate with other breweries, but also to get your name out there? And what, just define what contract brewery is, because I don't know if many people know kind of that concept, and then how that got you guys to kind of jump off and build your brand.
Sure, I'll go a little bit into the contract brewing and let Benny pick up on the collaboration element, as that definitely is a huge part of who we are and what we do, and really, sinking into the concepts and fundamentals of craft beer. But contract brewing is one pathway to being a brewing company. A lot of people don't even understand that Samuel Adams is still a contract brewery.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Biggest and most famous contract brewery. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the reality is, Benny and I are not brewers. What we did have was a phenomenal concept for this industry and how to expand it, how to bring something different to the table, and how to showcase some representation. So what we did, I had the fortune of being able to work with, a lot of phenomenal brewers, over the past 7 years, and have a pretty decent palate. So with that palate and with the compilation of brewers and 2 production facilities, we're able to build recipes that are specific to these breweries. We have 2 contract breweries that we work with, one in Inglewood and one in Santa Rosa, and we're able to design recipes that can be specifically executed in these facilities. And that allows us to produce liquid, to have it packaged, and to enter it into distribution to where we could, from a company standpoint, we can grow our affinity, we can build our brand, and we can build our portfolio even before we have our brick and mortar.
Right.
And that was a strategy that was done partly by design and partly because of a pandemic. We couldn't open a brick and mortar. It didn't make any business sense to do so. So we probably leaned in a little bit harder into that contract brewing model, but it's not foreign. Several brewing companies do it all over the world. And it's the vehicle that we use to get Crowns and Hops on the map.
That's great. And then Benny, on the marketing side, because you were able to produce and get things out there, talk to me a little bit about the development of the logo, the development of the design aesthetic of the cans, right? That's starting to become, for a craft brewery, that's starting to become like the biggest thing people look for is like, what do the cans look like? What does this mean? And what's the connection to the actual brewers who make it? Talk to me a little bit about that the design aesthetic there.
I think having the creative and advertising experience that I have and Tio has from the product packaging side, we knew that it required some time and some patience to get it right. Right. So we started from scratch. We built the logo, the brand guidelines, the package, because we knew that what we were creating right now was going to last and needed to stand the test of time. It was important for us, just even in our name, that we have the word hops, and Tio can talk about that. And so, because a lot of people don't even understand that hops are a really key component in beer. And we wanted our logo, we want our branding to be representative of something that you see and it's just like, oh my God, that's so dope. But you don't have to necessarily say, oh, they must be Black or associated with any particular race, right? Because that's really not what this is about. This is about creating a brand that's connected to the culture that's missing in craft beer. And that culture that's missing is a mixture of brown and Black communities. But our culture is very wide. It's hip hop.
Oh, but you better believe we got some cans that you'll be like, oh yeah, they Black.
Oh yeah, okay. You do have to, you do have to lean in a little bit and be super specific. But ultimately,
Juneteenth was like, look,
right?
Yes,
we celebrate.
Was super.
We celebrate, motherfuckers.
Right. Yeah, Black History Month will be very specific, but overall, when you look at all of our products, you immediately are drawn to it because the creativity is there and the energy is there, and it feels like something that I think now people knowing us, Benny and Tio, the faces and the voices of this brand and this movement, this feels like us. And if you go to any brewery, when you walk in the door, the brewery usually is a reflection of the owners, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not to say Black and brown people have been purposely excluded from the industry. It's just if white people are the only ones that, one, know about craft beer, been to breweries, understand breweries, and they're the only ones opening up these facilities, then of course it's going to look like something that how they grew up and their culture.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important for us as Black owners to create more Black owners and and brown owners in the industry, so that our creativity and our products, all parts of the branding, can be truly reflective of what's been missing. And what's been missing has been us.
Yeah, and I think it almost goes without saying that Benny and I bring our previous careers into this industry as well. It could be an assumption, but I think some people assume that if there's a black-owned craft brewery, that there's not going to be that attention to detail, that very specific, curated, and well thought out packaging. If you look at the packaging of Beat Messenger Pilsner, like we literally, created a pattern based off of like cassette tapes, mixtapes, that are relative, to hip hop, specifically the concept of a mixtape, which I'm not even sure if this generation even knows that it was actually a tape.
They have no
And
idea.
They,
yeah,
they had to wait for me, it was Hot 97. You had to wait for the song to come on Hot 97, hit record,
Record
click
on
and
your
record at the
thing.
exact same time to get the song. Yeah.
I mean, hey, bro. I mean, that's the type of nostalgia that we tap into with
Yeah.
our brand. We tap into those things that literally have been missing, and Benny and I take a lot of time. We spend a lot of money, which is another conversation we should probably tap into, which is cultural appropriation to curate our culture in craft beer. Because the reality is there have been people in this industry and other industries that have used our cultures and have made legacies for themselves off of it
Right.
before Black people in America, the descendants of African slaves in this country, have even remotely had an opportunity to capitalize on it. So Benny and I use this, and you'll hear this several times, as an opportunity to showcase Black and brown excellence in a way that hasn't been done before, because the resources haven't been, the capital for capital intensive industries hasn't been there. There are a lot of things that we're able to do with this company other than just make beer.
Yeah.
That we are by far bigger than beer.
Well, let's go there a little bit. I wasn't going to go there, but I like this direction here.
Go there,
You better
bro.
go
Yeah,
there,
but
damn it.
Best
let's do
podcast on the planet. Let's do it.
it. I grew up in Section 8 housing, so the bodegas and the corner stores that were right next to my apartment building had Colt 45,
Mm.
Mickey's, maybe, Presidente was probably like the most expensive thing. And, it felt, as I grew up and started to learn more about beer, it felt intentional. What are your thoughts on that in terms of what's being marketed and what's being put in the stores where Black, brown, Latino people live?
I think it's definitely intentional. They're food deserts.
Yeah.
It's all part of it's just the lack of having premium quality products and creating a world where you don't have to spend a lot of money just to have something, but it doesn't mean it's great. It doesn't mean it's good. And there's no education around the need and want to have something better. So
There are literally government reports on
yeah.
and studies on how the alcohol industry descended on Black and brown communities, low income communities, with these products.
Yeah.
Poorly made products with ingredients that would ramp up the alcohol content, but
Mm-hmm.
the ingredient, or rather the process and ingredients that they used for it, were terrible. To do it in a way that was predatory, that was very intended to keep people in a place that did not align with what we know as craft beer fundamentals and concepts now, which are elements of ownership, of family, of sharing, of community. Like, that's not the narrative that was, brought up around the 40 ounce. It
Yep.
was brought up with the concept of hyper masculinity,
Yep.
of toxic masculinity, of
Abuse.
yeah, of abuse, of violence, and it's interesting to see how some breweries have even taken that. They almost do puns off of it,
Mm.
because when they were in their town, they used to want to be a thug or whatever the case
Right.
might be,
Yeah.
and now today they'll do a special 40 ounce of whatever it is that they're doing, not knowing that, in my mind, when I see a 40 ounce, I don't think that at all. I think people and or a time to where exposure to premium things was not a part of our narrative, and that couldn't be remotely close to where we are today with it. And I think we have, again, an opportunity, not only as a company but as an industry, to correct that.
To add to that, a lot of the marketing and branding geared towards these lower income families are specifically meant for you not to ask questions about what you're buying
Mm.
and what you're taking in,
Great point.
which is why when we were a lifestyle brand, it was extremely important to us to create opportunities for people to ask questions. We knew we couldn't just start with products, right? Because then we'd be no better than all the other brands targeting people of color. We wanted you to understand the what, the why, and the how of craft beer products, of craft beer culture, and then let you decide. Is this something that you like? Do you want to be a part of this community? And if you don't, it's fine. But look what it is and learn about it. And that was why it was important to show content. Black people brewing, Black ownership. At our events, we would have tastings where we'd have the actual brewery owners there and the brewers there to answer any questions you had about how was this made? What did this come from? And I think when you start to create a world where you can ask questions in a comfortable space, then it starts to open up and expand, and our mission is to preserve culture, build community, and expand palettes.
It's crazy how we had to kind of fight. We're throwing stones at, the efforts of these brewing companies, but from a marketing standpoint, the motherfuckers killed it. Like, like they found some of our dopest MCs, our dopest artists. I mean, we're talking about everybody from Snoop to freaking the Commodores to Red Fox to,
Yeah.
I mean,
Billy D.
Billy D.
Williams.
Williams.
Yep.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Code 45 works
Like,
every time. Yeah.
like, bro, not only was that so successful, it worked so successful that they just started using an illustration of him 30 years later, bro. Like, it goes to show you how intentional and how targeted they were at an entire community to think that that was their craft beer, that it belonged to them, that it belonged, that they were to win, if they champion this particular brand. And that couldn't have been further from the truth.
Yeah.
These companies didn't give a shit about us at all. It's a different day. People want to be aligned with products and companies that are aligned with the missions of their family and of their neighborhoods. And that's how Crowns and Hops is different. We use our skill set to incite change for the better of our community, not just to see them intoxicated and in a place to where they can't unfold.
So how do you disrupt the distribution process, right? Like here in New York, it's I think 3 or 4 distribution companies, and you got to get on that truck, right? In order to get your beer into the store, you got to get on that truck. Are you finding new avenues or new ways to get your beer into the hands of craft beer lovers?
Well, one, the 3-tier system is there for a reason, and that's wholesalers, retailers, and direct to consumer. What craft beer has been able to do, extraordinarily well, to include through the pandemic, is direct to consumers.
Absolutely.
We have opportunities to be direct to consumer, but there's another thing that happens as it relates to lack of access to craft beer is having to travel outside of your community in order to access it, which is why we were so committed to Inglewood. We'll be located on Crenshaw Boulevard and Manchester, pretty much right on the block. Yeah, a few blocks up from where Nipsey Hussle started the marathon. So it was very important to that. But to answer your question, we do a bit of it all. Given that we do contract brew, we don't have access to as much liquid as we would like to have to where we could really exercise every tier of the system or the tiers that are available to us. So we use a tandem of getting beer out to our distributors in Southern and Northern California. We do limited edition drops in Atlanta, in New York, in Portland, because we are, in some ways, we're like everybody's local, that loves dope shit, so we can't be so fixated on being this money-making model that everybody has to come to us to get the liquid. We also want to ensure that people that love culture, that love what we're doing, have an opportunity to celebrate with our liquid as well.
The other thing to add to that too, we have an opportunity to change an industry in many levels, right? So it's not just a product on shelves, it's not just opening up a brick and mortar, but when you do talk about distribution, the conversations that we have with our distribution partners are, listen, this is your opportunity to get into neighborhoods and to get into stores you've never ever been in before. You can actually create an entire new product demand in areas that want it but didn't even know it existed. Tio's done a phenomenal job of ensuring with every beer that we drop, we have allocations specifically going to our Black retail partners and restaurants,
Cool.
first to make sure that they're able to get what they need. Then it can, go to the larger distributors. And that's not to say we don't have partners, of course, that are also not Black, because we do. We have some phenomenal support from some really amazing retail partners. But we do know that we have to support one another and create this ecosystem through the entire network where we all get an opportunity to win and we all get an opportunity to shine. So you got to make change and you got to push for it and know the power of your brand in order for that to happen.
And think about it. That's where we, when people hear that word racial equity, I don't know. I don't know if they truly understand what that means. And what Beny just explained is by us being present in this distribution portfolio, it literally influences your entire portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about Crowns and Hops winning here. This is about distribution strengthening. This is about other beers and breweries in the portfolio of the distributor being able to also benefit. This is a strategy for economic growth, period. So it would be far simpler to just go, here's our liquid, come and get it, and you just have to figure it out. But we feel like the opportunity to bring awareness and to make sure that people have access is far more important than just racking in the dollars. I mean, you're probably you're able to get our beer online through Tavor, through Craft Shack,
Yep.
Tap Room. You're able to get it in stores because we work with Stone Distribution and Hen House Distribution. By the way, shout out Colin and Shane Sayer and Hen House. They've done a phenomenal job because there's people that are in these organizations that are also just as excited to get our brand into places where they weren't able to do it before because they know that people are specifically looking for Crowns and Hops. And once they see Crowns and Hops, they're going to go, well, damn, what's that chicken? What's that can with that chicken on it? Man, that's in-house. Let me try that too.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. It unfolds. It just doesn't stay in a box,
It's one of the parts of craft brewery that I love more than anything else is that exploration, right? And anybody that I've talked to in the community is always open to try something new. I'd love to hear from you all. What was that first beer that kind of opened up your craft beer mind to the possibilities?
Easy. Pliny
Yeah.
the Elder.
Yeah. Oh man.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. That's like a no-brainer, man. That was the one. I would say there's 3 steps to T.O.'s craft beer journey.
Okay.
The very first beer that I was like, what the fuck am I drinking? Was Dead Guy L by
Rogue.
Rogue.
Yeah. Cool.
And that was over, that was maybe 15, no, maybe about 10, 15 years ago. Are they that old?
Yeah, definitely. I was
You
bartending.
that old.
Yeah, I was bartending in Chicago in 2003,
Yep.
and we had Rogue, and that was also one of Rogue and Bell's were kind of Bell's Brewery
Yep.
in Michigan. Were kind of some of my gateway.
The other one was Allagash Curio.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Shout out to my boy Matt Taylor. Also our designer, Varnish Studio, fucking incredible design firm. He brought me and we celebrated with an Allagash Curio, which we're really good friends with Rob Todd now, which is super cool. But then Pliny the Elder, that broke the seal. That was everything, and still is.
For me, in the first early stages of this, I couldn't tell you the name of the beers I was drinking because there was way too many to try to remember. But the style that completely changed it for me was the hazy, which is, for all the obvious reasons, is the most popular style now. But I think, I'm still not a huge fan of bitter beers, honestly. So for me, a hazy is that nice balance, right, between getting that, really tropical aroma and notes, but then you still get a little bit of that bitterness, but it's not too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say that at this point, I think we have the most perfect hazy IPA, our BPOB signature beer that revolutionized the craft beer industry, because BPOB stands for Black People Love Beer, Brown People Love Beer. But yeah, it's the hazy, and it's the beer that as we started doing events, which was also what a lot of people don't realize, that was our school, that was our beer school, to a certain extent. When we do these events, and we watch how people reacted to all of the different styles, so you could, and especially people of color, because that's who we were targeting. We had to learn about our audience. Just because we're black doesn't mean we know everything that black people like to do. That's insane. Or
Right,
brown people
right.
like to do. Like, we're not, we're all very different. But I think especially for on Tio's side, he could see how people were reacting to different recipes and different beer experiences to help craft what we knew we liked, and then what would our community be responsive to. And for me, it was always hazy.
Yeah.
Hazy was always, just try it, just try it. And then they taste it. First they smell it and they're blown away because the aroma is so different than a stinky Heineken.
Yeah.
And they're just like, what's
I think
this?
it's like a fruit smoothie, right?
Right.
Like,
They're like, oh my God, this smells amazing. I think fruit.
Which hilariously is a craft beer style right now.
I know,
Right. Yeah,
it's wild. Yeah.
exactly. And then when they taste it, we love to watch the expressions on
Cool.
their faces, because everybody always leaves with, well, I don't drink beer, and then they taste it, and we got them. They're hooked, and that's how you start to expand your palate. You start to expand your mind, and you become very receptive, and you believe that there is more out there, and that's how you grow.
Do you remember when your beer was on tap for the first time? Do you remember that feeling? Because it sounds like you have a very visceral connection to the community and to beer drinkers about it. Do you remember that first moment where you're like, oh shit, our beer's on tap here?
It wasn't even in this country.
Oh, really?
It sure wasn't.
Technically, the first time we had a Crowns and Hops beer pouring, that was our beer, because we had done a couple of collaborations up until that point. But the first time that we had our beer pouring, that was an actual Crowns and Hops, was at the Brewdog AGM festival.
Oh, cool.
In
was that Scotland or?
No, it was in London, actually.
London.
The
Okay.
first one. It was in
It was,
London,
yeah.
which was the first one. Yeah, it was really surreal. I mean, like, what are the chances a girl from Harlem and a kid from Altadena, California, Inglewood, is going to have their first beer pouring in the UK for the first time? But it was a really interesting exploration, because it was our first opportunity to see how what we designed was received by the community. I would even argue that, we're on BPLB Hazy IPA version 3. Version 1 was not great to me. It was super, I was terrified, man, because, I knew what we wanted to do, and it didn't come together like the way, and I'm very open about this, and I talk to, because we started being influencers. So if we were putting something out there that we were going to have our shit called out on, I'm going to be the first to call it out, because what does that make us look like if I can't even call out what we are and what we've done? But lastly, and I'll let Beny kind of speak to her experience, when BPLB version 3 dropped, that hazy IPA was on point. Tropical notes of guava, stone fruit, pineapple. The aroma was banging. The mouthfeel was right on point, from aroma to mouthfeel to finish to, I mean, it was crushable, and you could drink 100% of the liquid, which we are very specific about. There's a lot of beers to where you turn that can, over, and you get a bunch of liquid that you're like, do I need
a little sediment? Yeah.
Oh my God, I wanted to drink 100% of this expensive liquid. I don't want to dump the last 5% down the drain, but it's been a pretty cool journey.
For me, on the marketing side of it, it was more of the fact that we were in a whole nother country for the first time together. I think it might have been Tio's first time overseas, period. And we were making beer and we were pouring beer, and it was our own beer.
Cool.
We were like 4 or 5 years into the company, and I made it a point to have all of our winter coats have Black People Love Beer on the back of them. So we have pictures of us in castles in Scotland and
cool.
walking around London with Black People Love Beer. And I think for me, that was the most important thing, is you felt our presence. You felt there was an ownership that we confidently kind of had as we walked around. And it's that same ownership that we have now brought back to our home. I'm not sure if you're familiar. We recently launched an equity crowdfunding.
Let's talk about that, because you raised some money. I know Brewdog invested in it, and now you put out this equity investment that anybody can come in and invest. Why did you feel like that was the best way to raise this next round?
We started this entire journey with the community. What better way than to build our brand than to invite and welcome the community to own equity and own a part of what they physically helped build? We wouldn't be anywhere without the support of our communities, our consumers, our OGFCs, original gangster founders crews, what we call them, who have shown us so much support consistently, so much love. There's been so many times where we felt like we were going to give up, and then we'd run into someone who loves what we're doing and gives us a few words of encouragement, and then it pushes us forward. So our most humbling way to be able to share what we're doing with the community is to let them own it.
Yeah.
Join our journey, own equity in Crowns and House Brewing Company.
Yeah, it is a bit. The offer is a bit of a invitation, to come to the table with us. Something that wasn't offered to us.
Yeah.
And that's in any industry. I mean, and don't get me wrong, any is a big statement, but I'll say most of the brands that Black, brown people that enjoy the culture of Black and brown people, they have never been given an opportunity to own the thing that they patronize.
Yeah.
And for us, that is so important. I mean, man, can you think about if I don't know what shoes you have on, but if you have on Nike or Adidas, can you think about if the motherfuckers was like, so by the way, we're gonna allow you to participate. I mean, you can now, they're public, but at the beginning,
Yeah.
Man, I mean, like, we can't wait for 5 years down the line for the people that saw who we were, the people that gave us that pat on the back, that gave us that encouragement, knowing damn well that Beny and I were busting our ass 24 hours around the clock, no sleep, freaking going broke damn near sometimes. I mean, those people understand and are the people that are investing. We're almost at 700 investors right now. Those 700 people see it. They get it.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're making a big enough case to people who are just now seeing who we are, to fact they could scroll down on our Instagram feed and understand how committed we are to this. And to be able to offer that is pretty great at owncrowns.com.
Okay, I was gonna say that again. Where can people, if they
Oh,
want
yeah.
to invest, where should they go?
Owncrowns.com. I don't know. Maybe you should say it, Benny. Maybe it'll resonate more with people if you say it.
Owncrowns.com.
Simple. Is that OWNCROWNS.com?
Yes, it's OWNCROWNS.
That's crazy. So the word own is in Crowns? Is that
And
what
the
you're
name of
saying?
the brand, it's Own Crowns. Yes.
As in Crowns?
Own Crowns.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable.
That's a
How's
good,
that for marketing?
That's a good URL. If you guys have time for one more question, is that
Yeah,
cool?
of course.
I wanted to get into the bona fides of, your marketing background, especially Beny, Sonos, Beats by Dre, Arnold, McCann Worldwide.
Yeah.
Those are some big brands, right? When did you realize this was what needed your full-time attention? When, for both of you, I'd love to hear the story of when you went, okay, I got to stop that and really focus on this.
I think for me, when I got older and realized, guess who doesn't have as much time as she used to, and or the patience or energy for the bullshit, right? So old. But those are really big brands, and I'm really blessed to have been able to do what I've done. And sometimes I feel like that was like a past life. When I look at, I used to produce TV commercials, and now I co-own a beer company. Like, it's so crazy. But there was a moment where all of my happiness was in this. All of my energy and excitement was in Crowns and Hops and what we were building. And I no longer had love for working for anyone else, for helping someone else build out their businesses and help someone else make money. And my lineage, my dad was the manager and founder of the Commodores. My mom, she used to, create programs for people of color. I think when I really understood the impact of what we were doing, it became more of a personal mission to keep pushing forward. And how do we make real change using all of these years that I've learned of marketing and advertising, creating, and just helping other people. How do I help myself? How do I help Tio? How do I help the community? Which was not something I think I was allowed to do in any of my previous careers. It's rewarding, it's fulfilling, it's life changing.
Tio, how about you?
Yeah, it was kind of a compilation. I kind of stumbled into my purpose in a certain way. You know, being primarily in entertainment packaging and home entertainment with Paramount and Miramax and Universal, and then literally Netflix just
Yeah, you're no
pulled the
slouch
rug.
either. Okay.
Oh my God, bro! 2008 was a terrible year, bro. And trying to reinvent myself through other people's vision and purpose
Mm,
was just a losing battle.
yeah.
It's like, you go to college and, you obtain the experience that you do or that you have, in your career, ultimately to innovate and to unfold and to do better than what was before, not to just keep regurgitating what's already been done. And, I was lost, I was not motivated at all. And I had a really good friend by the name of Kenny Mack that asked me what brought me joy and what brought me happiness and joy. And I didn't really have an answer for him. And it was in really kind of investigating this opportunity that Benny and I had uncovered that I then realized my purpose, and I mean, shit, I quit my job immediately and started working as a cellar person, at a brewery and just trying to figure that shit out and trying to figure out what stuff was real, what was not, what was I making up. Because here's the thing, as a marketer or being in marketing and advertising, I think sometimes we forget what stuff is our own authentic thought and
Yeah.
our own, what is our gut telling us to do, because we're so used to accommodating the client, we're so used to accommodating the creative director, the art director, all these things, that sometimes you forget your own dopeness. You forget the thing that makes you the X factor. And I found it again. And it was funny that the last thing I'll say is I did a short stint in a cannabis industry as well.
Okay.
And I would say that that was the straw that broke the camel's back when I realized that what I was doing in the space, I knew how to do extraordinarily well based off of what Benny and I have been doing with Dope and Dank and kind of starting out with building the brand Crowns and Hops. And I'll never forget like being in a room with the person that was managing the social media at the time. And I'm just looking at mistakes all over. I'm just like,
Oh
oh my
man.
God. I'm like, have you thought about doing this? And at the time I didn't really expose that, I was a co-founder of a craft brewing company that started from social media, but they pretty much just told me to shut up and stay in my lane.
Oh man.
And I was just like, oh, I was like, okay. I was like, got it.
Yeah.
I'm like, got it. And that was the last part-time, full-time job that I ever had.
Yeah.
It was 100% me and Benny and Crowns and Hops from that point on.
Good
You
for
know,
you, man. I love that. We'll end on this if it's okay. What does the next year look like? It sounds like brick and mortar's coming. Inglewood, you're in SoFi Stadium, is that correct? You got some
We
cans there as
are.
well.
We are in SoFi. If you go to SoFi, ask for Crowns and Hops.
Okay, yeah, yeah, definitely. Chargers and Rams games. So
Yes.
every single week, 17 games now, 18 or whatever. What does the next year look like for y'all? What are you most excited about?
and opening that brick and mortar, bro.
Yeah,
Like hands down, like to create home, to use everything that we've learned from producing beer, from selling beer, to creating spaces that are not only safe from a cultural significance for people to feel safe to be themselves, but also to be safe throughout COVID. Creating a space that's indoor, outdoor. That I mean, Benny just mentioned it. 14,400 square feet. We have a lot of space and opportunity to make sure people feel comfortable. And to be honest, to complete this raise, I think we're about at the midway point. Almost at about $500,000. We have a lot that we have planned for our company. So just excited to see it come to fruition, bro.
amazing.
And I will say the same thing. It is Crowns, Inglewood, Crowns, Inglewood, Crowns, Inglewood. It took us a really long time to get here, but we could not be more ready to open our doors and finally have a place for our community to come together and celebrate with us. So it's gonna be good. It's gonna be
Amazing.
good.
And the one thing that I think a lot of people get it twisted sometimes. We lead with black owned. We lead with a beer that's black people love beer, brown people love beer. But we're living at a time to where this is one of the first times in the history of our country, of the world, that we can actually lean into that for the first time. You know,
Yeah.
we've had our culture contribute to the most significant things on this planet, to include building a damn country. You know, and rock and roll, jazz, activism. And this is a beautiful opportunity, not only for the people that have done that and accomplished that, but for the people that celebrate it and enjoy it and give an opportunity for us to achieve something for our people, for our community, and ultimately for the entire country. You know, again, racial equity is a strategy for economic growth for all of us, and that's what we're accomplishing.
Beny and Tio, this has been so fun talking to you. I can't wait to visit and taste the beers fresh from the tap, fresh from the source.
I didn't get from you, bro. What's your favorite style of beer?
Hazies as well. I was a big West Coast IPA guy early on. You know, the introduction for me was Sierra Nevada was probably like the first real like
for a lot of us.
Yeah. Newcastle was probably the first beer that I had that wasn't like the malt liquor or Budweiser. But then I bartended at this place in Chicago called Sheffield's, where we had over 100 different beers, and the general manager there told me to try a different beer every night. And so that was really my indoctrination into trying new things. So I'm a very seasonal, right? So it's starting to get, well, right now it's really hot here in New York, but it's starting to get a little bit colder here. So I'll move into the porters and the stouts for the fall and the winter. But the hazy IPAs are for me the daily go-tos. Those are the ones that I love the most.
And look out for our stout, Urban Anomaly. I like to think of it as the Guinness killer.
Okay, that might have been one of the ones that I ordered. Is that on tap room?
It should be.
Yeah. I ordered the HBCU and then whatever stout was on tap room.
Word.
So I should be getting that at some point. Now it's pouring rain here, so I don't know if it's coming.
He's like, I'm looking outside. Mailman?
Yeah, I wanted to show it. I wanted to be like, I got it right here. But yeah.
Let us know what you think about that stout, bro. It was literally one of our first beers that we brewed. It was one of the first beers that poured at that festival in the UK. And we're really proud of it. We believe that the return of the sessionable, crushable stout, American stout, is here, and we're excited to lead it. So make sure and give it those untapped ratings, and let's take that market share back, man.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, the other thing with the hazies, I love them, but sometimes those 10, 12% double, triple hazies leave a mark on you the next morning. Especially I turned 40 a couple weeks ago. They really leave a mark on you now. So I do love the 4%, 5% crushables, and how I think people are starting to pull it back a little bit and kind of put some restraint into it, where, I would say 3 to 5 years ago it was, how hoppy can we make this? Now it's, okay, let's pull it back a little bit and then enjoy it. So I'm excited to try that one.
You'll love HBCU too, man.
Cool. Finally, where can people get your product? We just want one last shout out before we say goodbye.
crownsandhops.com. You can find in the California area, there is a beer locator. You can put your zip code in there. But if you want to get it when you're out of state, again, Craft Shack, find Craft Shack, Tavor, Tap Room, along with a few other online distributors as well. And again, don't forget to take advantage of that opportunity. We got about 30 to 40 days left in this equity crowdfunding campaign. If you love the liquid, then rock with us. We're excited to invite you on as an OGFC.
Amazing. Thank you, Beny and Tio, co-founders of Crowns and Hops. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to The Changeup, produced by Elena Weedland, with original music by Rodney Hazard. If you liked what you heard, we'd appreciate your support by liking, sharing, leaving a comment, and subscribing wherever you listen. Thanks once again. Until next time.